Despite Bloodborne being the first From Software game I reviewed, Elden Ring was actually the first one I played. My first playthrough, I jumped in and was overwhelmed by how much freedom I was given, in the sense that there isn't a minimap and a waypoint telling you where to go like every other AAA game. You can go anywhere and fight anyone and anything, but the problem with that is you wander out into no man's land and get fucking stomped because you're underleveled for this area and that area too. So I just decided to follow the main path. I scraped my way through and died to Margit over and over until I gave in and looked up what the fuck I was doing wrong and why I was doing so little damage. Surprise, surprise, I was underleveled. I farmed and followed a beginner's guide, upgraded my weapon, and was finally able to get past the first major boss. I continued and eventually even beat Morgoth, but then I just stopped playing. I'm not really sure why, I just wasn't really feeling the game at the time, so I put it down and just decided these Souls games just weren't my cup of tea. Well, turns out I was a fucking moron, because about a month ago I beat Bloodborne and absolutely adored it, so much so that it inspired me to revisit Elden Ring. And the second time around, the overwhelming scale of the game felt liberating. It's inviting rather than intimidating this time around. I knew that I was going to do it this time. I knew I'd complete it and I would become the new ruler of the lands between. I had a few criticisms for Bloodborne that were thankfully addressed in Elden Ring, such as the long runbacks. No matter how many OG Souls fans chirp in my ear and tell me that all the tedium is part of the experience, it's not going to convince me. Runbacks are no longer than a few seconds most of the time, thanks to there being a shit ton more checkpoints or sites of grace. And even where there isn't sites of grace, there are these stakes of Marika which allow you to spawn pretty much right outside of the boss arena. It's due to this that I had a lot more fun just toughing out some of these goofy attack patterns. I enjoyed it more because there wasn't loads of downtime in between my deaths. Another criticism I had for Bloodborne was the rigid upgrade system. The items needed for upgrading your weapon were in short supply, and you were more or less pigeonholed into using the same weapon throughout your whole playthrough, if you wanted it at max level, that is. You're not exactly going to be tripping over the smithing stones in this game, but they're more abundant, and later down the line you can buy an infinite supply from the Twin Maiden husks if you collect the bell bearings. My first and second playthrough, I used a strength build, and let me just be the millionth person to say this, but with Gut's sword being in this game, or the Dragon Slayer, and me being such a huge fan of Berserk, how could I not love this game? You absolutely shred through enemies with this hunk of iron. It's so satisfying. When I got this to max level and almost maxed out my strength, you just make a mockery of bosses' health bars. There's such a wide variety of weapons here, melee and ranged. Or you can just be a mage if you're of a giant. Regardless of your build or your play style, gameplay is just as fun as ever. It never gets old repeatedly being stomped by a big, cocky bastard, only to eventually overcome them and reign victorious. Exploration is always rewarded. You'll find some badass weapons, you'll find some weird out there NPCs, some gorgeous serene landscapes, and some hellish dungeons and war grounds. And boy, does this game look great! And it's even more impressive that they crammed this whole ginormous behemoth of a game into 60 gigabytes. It isn't photorealistic, but it's stylized in such a way that it doesn't need to be realistic. It's still visually impressive. But now I'm done kissing the game's arse. What could be better here? Firstly, this game would not be worse if it had a little more guidance here and there. It really drip feeds you any sort of signs that you're doing anything right most of the time. Some of these late game enemies and bosses are overbearing in the difficulty. I also wish the game gave you some checklists for completionist runs, like an area by area checklist of bosses defeated, bosses yet to be defeated, that sort of thing. However, all of these issues are really rather minor in the face of the most continuous problem: the story, and the characters and how you interact with them. From here on out there will be spoilers, so if you're one of the 3 people in the world that haven't played this game, beware. You ready? Cool. On your journey, you will meet an abundance of interesting characters. The majority of them are missable, and you know, there's plenty that are part of the main quest, but Regardless, you'll always just find them kind of stood in place, glued to the floor. A lot of these encounters feel very unnatural, and the game really deprives you of anything meaningful. Melina, your supposed maiden, sacrifices herself to set the Erd tree aflame. Are we supposed to feel anything here? Is this supposed to be a somber, noble moment? We don't even know her. She shows up like once every 10 hours randomly. I stumbled upon and started Ranni's questline, but I had no clue where to go after. I followed a guide and was just thinking to myself the whole time, how on earth would anyone figure this out on their own? Unless they have unlimited time to play this game non-stop. If I want to continue a questline, throw me a bone, please. Don't make me search aimlessly. The game's design has failed when you need to look up a guide. More specifically, if you look up a guide and you think, how the fuck was I supposed to know that? Bloodborne and other Souls games are guilty of some of this cryptic nonsense, like you need to do a specific emote in front of a specific wall and you'll net some sort of hidden item. Like, yeah, I get it's meant to be hidden, but it's a nightmare for completionists that like to do stuff on their own. And by the end of it, even if you force yourself through a questline, to me it never really felt worth it because you don't get to spend any time with these characters and develop a meaningful bond with them. I would love to feel more involved with some of the cast, but alas, they're just stuck in place forever. Having a buddy system where they can like tag along would make the game too easy in my opinion, but the odd little fetch quest with them would be kind of cool. Being able to hear dialogue outside of a cutscene without triggering it, that would lend even more legitimacy to this already lived in world. A major saving grace for this game is how naturalistic the voice acting is, and some of the one-liners the bosses deliver.
Oh, death. Become my blade once more.
Pillagers, emboldened by the flame of ambition.
The game has dozens of NPCs to find and interact with, but they're all fairly shallow. This worked in Bloodborne as most of the NPCs you'd interact with were just townsfolk. And the world was reeling with beasts and it's too dangerous for the common man. Yeah, you'd bump into other hunters, but that game excelled in making you feel desperate and isolated. You thrived on that feeling. Plus, I can give it a pass being a 2015 game. Even though plenty of games from that year, and even years and years prior, had more meaningful side character interactions like this. But back on track, Elden Ring came out in 2022. There's no excuses now. The lore is so interesting for this game. I just wish it was properly presented to the player instead of you having to read into things or like really dig for it. I hope FromSoft continues to evolve and eventually gives us something to chew on narrative-wise. These worlds are so interesting, but I'm always left craving real substance. I absolutely love this game. I love it so much. I'm playing it for a third time now, determined to beat every single boss. That's where this game's strength lies, the wide array of boss fights and weapon choices. If for whatever reason you're contemplating picking this game up and starting it, do not let my gripes put you off. There really are just minor distractions in an otherwise legendary generational game. The story certainly isn't anything to write home about, but I could write a novel about these boss battles. They'll fucking grind you down to dust. You'll want to give up, but if you dig your heels in, there's nothing else quite like the sense of accomplishment you'll feel when you land that killing blow. Even when you're just fighting the standard enemies, just like Bloodborne, you can still get jumped and caught off guard by the weaker enemies. I 100% wholeheartedly recommend this game. Yes, it does kind of have a lackluster narrative, and I wish there was a little more to do with the other characters. But can I really judge the game on that basis if FromSoft weren't even really trying to excel in those areas? I simply can't say it's a masterpiece, but it's pretty fucking close, and some people prefer the story to hold its cards closer to the chest. For the love of God, just give it a go. Follow a beginner's guide if you need to. I adored Bloodborne, but I understand it's not for everyone. But with this game, I feel like everyone can find a little something for themselves. For all you Souls fans, I intend to cover Dark Souls 3 after I've finished my New Game Plus run, so stick around for that. Yeah, that's about it. Go play this game. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned.